This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, nonstop Leafs talk starts now.
Well, the first name has surfaced in Toronto's search for a new GM presented by Botano. It's the Wednesday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and the returning Jay Rosehill. What's up, Rosie? How are you, buddy?
How are you, dude? Yeah, good long weekend. Ready to catch up on all the drama.
Why'd you say it that way?
Because it's dramatic.
You didn't know Kyle Dubas is the best GM of all time. Sorry, I shouldn't bury him this quickly. He was a great GM for this franchise, but I aptly named this show Team Dubas or Team Shanny or something like that. It was Team Kyle and Team Shanny. Should mention a TSN hockey analyst, former captain in the NHL, former Leaf executive. You have some ties to him, I believe, both with Tampa and Toronto. Dave Poulin is coming up in about 10. Looking forward to getting his analysis, opinion, and everything around that and what transpired the last week here in Leafs Nation. Remember to subscribe, tap that like button, leave us a review wherever you're checking us out, at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, at the Leafs Nation 401, where you could subscribe. If you're watching right now and are not subscribed, I don't know what the hell you're doing, at the Leafs Nation 401. Additionally, we're available wherever you find your podcast. Just search Leafs Morning Take. You'll find us. Don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest in all things Toronto Maple Leafs. Thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns. Just looking at the chat briefly. Pretty hot today as per usual. So get your thoughts, your aspirations for what's to come here in Leafs Nation. But for now, let's get over the boards. All right, Rosie, so I referenced off the top, the first concrete name has surfaced in Toronto's GM search. His name is Brad Treliving. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's interesting, kind of close to home because, you know, I'm out west here. We follow the Flames pretty closely. All my buddies do. And it's crazy how that guy went from a walking god for pulling together that deal last year. You know, he gets Weegar, he gets Huberdeau. Everyone kind of knew Johnny was going to go. No one cared too much that Johnny was going to leave. I shouldn't say that, but I mean, he needed to go maybe. To Chuck, tough loss, but it just seemed like he wasn't hanging around. And for losing your guys and apparently having no power over that to replace him with that kind of talent he was a legend for pulling off that deal. And then those guys, you know, especially Huberdeau doesn't show up this year. I mean, the biggest fall from grace you can see point production wise, and all of a sudden he's gone and he hasn't done anything. And look at the mess he left in Calgary, and his naysayers are just tearing him apart. But at the end of the day, I think he's a pretty solid GM. Has he won a whole bunch being the GM? Maybe not, but he's got experience all right. I think that the deal he did pull together in Calgary remains a good deal. It's not his fault that Huberdeau decided to shit his pants this year. And I think at the end of the day, that trade could come back to be an all right deal, hopefully anyway, for Calgary.
So Treliving's 53. As you mentioned, he parted ways with Calgary in April. He spent 9 years as Flames GM. He made the playoffs 5 times, never made it past round 2. 5 different head coaches. I think in terms of a checklist, I think he hits a lot of boxes. You mentioned experience, success, a bit of both. I mean, made the playoffs 5 out of 9 years. I mentioned how hard it is to win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Does he have the ability to make the big move? I would say yes. Made the Matthew Tkachuk one, Dougie Hamilton. There are others. Like, he's not involved, or not afraid, I should say, to get his hands dirty. And that's another sort of aspect to look at in this position. He has experience in a big-time hockey market, right? Being in Calgary, the media is really, really strong and active there, as it is for the majority of Canada. And you need that in Toronto. So for me, I think he checks a lot of boxes, but you're going to get the Dubas side. They're not going to be happy with any decision. I can tell you that right now, Rosie.
Yeah, if anyone's in love with Dubas still, it doesn't matter who they bring in. They're going to be naysayers and people picking the person apart. Personally, I like Ray Shero and don't understand why he's not part of the conversation. But that being said, I'm more curious about who they bring in. What is his philosophy on hockey? I imagine it's going to be up to him to make a decision on the coach and what type of coach does he want to have involved? How does he want to coach the team? What type of team are we going to build? And I think, you know, my thoughts on that, this team needs to get some more jam and some more FU and some more, you know, playoff character in their locker room, because these 100-point seasons aren't getting the job done in the playoffs. So I think that needs to be addressed. And whoever comes in, that's my number one concern is what direction is he going in reference to getting a playoff hockey team ready here.
And of course, very curious to see what transpires in terms of other names coming to the forefront. It's always intriguing, and it's too early to call Brad Treliving a front runner, but there's a reason why they spoke to this guy first, no?
I would think so. I mean, he's a big name. He's just coming off the hot seat there. He doesn't have any dust to knock off or cobwebs. He's plugged right in, right? So, and the season didn't go the way they wanted. They made an obvious directional change with Sutter and himself. And I mean, I think if those guys that are there had a better season, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But that's the way of the business, and he's available. So I can understand why he's the front runner. And it's not just him that is a viable option, remember. So he's the name that's popping up right now, and we'll just see where it goes.
Whoever takes this job, there's a lot to do, I would say, Rosie, the next 37 days, I believe, until July 1st. And there's a couple of no movement clauses that kick in the form of Austin Matthews and I believe Mitch Marner as well. What's your level of concern right now with Matthews? We had this conversation a week ago before everything went down with Dubas and Shanahan, and we thought Dubas was coming back. Has your level of concern wavered that they'll be able to re-sign Austin Matthews long-term here?
It's tough to say, man. I mean, some people just say, oh, he was so tight with Dubas and he's not going to want to re-sign back with it. It's like, how the hell do you know that? Like, I bet you he hasn't even told anyone that besides his agent. Like, we don't know what the deal is with that. And it'll depend on who's coaching the team, in my mind. I think that's the big deal to Austin Matthews is who's coaching this thing. Okay, bring in XYZ for a general manager, but who's coaching me day in and day out, and what's his philosophy, and how does he handle me as a player? And if I'm going to sign here for the next call it 8 years or whatever he's going to put together, I think he's going to want to know what that setup is. So I truly don't believe that Austin Matthews even knows what he's going to do right now, even though Kyle Dubas has departed. I don't think that they're that joined at the hip by any stretch.
You can speak to this as a former player in the National League. If people are so caught up on the fact that Austin Matthews, and granted, he may have had the best relationship ever with Kyle Dubas, if he's going to hang his hat on this and take his ball and go home because Kyle Dubas is gone, I just think that's the wrong way to look at it, dude. Like, any player would comprehend it's a fucking business, right? Like, shit happens. Sometimes stuff you don't want to happen happens. It happens every offseason in the NHL. And this notion that, Austin Matthews is going to sulk now, he's pissed, his buddy got canned or is not coming back, I think is a ridiculous narrative, Rosie.
Yeah, that is, that's kind of dramatic and diva-ish and immature. And I mean, this is a business. And I mean, like I said, I don't know why the narrative is that way. Maybe I'm just out of touch and they are that tight and they're that close. But if you want to play in the NHL for 20 years, which I imagine he's planning on doing, you're not going to follow around your buddy all career long. So I don't imagine that is the case. And again, my biggest thing is figuring out, does he want to be here? And I think you got to get your GM in place, get a coach in place, whether you're sticking with Keefe or not, and then talk to Austin Matthews and get an understanding of where his head's at. Because if it's not where you want it to be, I mean, you got to start thinking some pretty big deals getting put in place here. As far as if he doesn't want to be here, you got to maximize your return for that guy ASAP. So lots going on, man. So much more this spring than I anticipated, but it's wicked because we're all sitting here waiting and analyzing and guessing, and it's just nothing but more action to come. That's for sure.
And it's great for business. That's all that matters here on Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill. Let's bring in today's guest, former executive in the league, TSN hockey analyst, former captain, former player in the NHL. It's Dave Poulin. What's happening, Dave?
Gentlemen, I'm smiling. I just caught the tail end of your little chat about relationship between a player and a general manager. And in Philadelphia, my teammate and close friend, Bob Clark, became general manager. Then we had kind of a complex relationship because I was the captain, he was the GM, and Mike Keenan was the head coach. So there were many times when the captain was the buffer between the head coach and the GM. But to show you about the business, when my phone rang one afternoon in Pittsburgh on a road trip, my roommate Rick Tocchet picked up the phone and handed it to me. It was Clarky, and he just said, "Davey, I just traded you to Boston." just like that. So it wasn't like, hey, you're a great friend and we've been together a long time and we've done some great things together and we went to the finals. And no, it was like, Davey, I just traded to Boston. Oh, thanks, Bob. Thanks for
yeah,
calling.
I know.
Business, eh?
It's just it's a business. Like,
It's a
I think
business.
it's
Don't
I'm in the
forget
media
that part of it.
and exactly. Like, I'm in the media, and you guys are in the media now too, and Dave, you as well with TSN. Like you lose sight of that sometimes. Like even watching the B-roll, if you will, of Shanahan and Dubas, going back and forth. Like I know they were buddies, but like sometimes you got to make tough decisions. But ultimately, what was your read on what's transpired the last week and a half here?
I'll go back to last Monday, and I think Kyle Dubas caught everybody by surprise on Monday, including his own camp. And that's pretty unusual. Usually you'd have a good sense of what the narrative was going to be, what the messaging was going to be. And once again, guys, we know what we hear secondhand. We're not privy to the conversations inside. But the candor and emotion of Kyle Dubas that day was very real. It was also like the candor of emotion of a lot of people right when the season ends. And like when the season ends, you're so beat up and there's so much emotion. It's physical, it's mental, you're not sleeping, you've got a million thoughts racing through your head. And I think that's why Brendan Shanahan didn't want Kyle Dubas to talk to the press that day. Let's let things calm down. So when a game ends, there's a cooling off period before we would let Randy Carlisle or Ron Wilson go up to the microphone for a reason. For a reason. Like, Randy, you're not going out there right now. Just wait. And so I think that was the first part of it. And then the week transpired as it did. But we only got the week through the eyes of Brendan Shanahan, which was the messaging on Friday. And the message on Friday afternoon caught everyone by surprise, without a doubt, that they were in fact moving on from Kyle Dubas. So I think at some point we'll find out what went on back and forth in that week from both sides of the equation. Now, Kyle did send a note out yesterday. He sent a release from his family. But the points that he made that day, guys, that it was family related, and we have to appreciate that. We have to understand that. In today's world, we simply do. And if those were all the reasons that he was saying, the hard part is he said, I'm either going to be the general manager of the Leafs or I'm going to be out. I'm going to take some time. I'm not going to surface somewhere else. And I don't see even the circumstances changing how or why the final decision was made in Toronto. I don't see how that changes how he shows up right after in Pittsburgh, if in fact he does.
Yeah, and Pools, obviously something went wrong as far as, they were close, but they were also fragile enough to have it fall apart that fast. Take us through, not very many people know what happens in an NHL locker room, but I think even fewer knows what happens in those offices and closed doors when NHL brass and the executives are all talking. Your experience being in multiple different organizations, is it that often that there is a power struggle? Is there, jargoning for ideas and to move forward with this direction? Does that happen more often than people think?
Yes, and it's healthy. And you want people with different opinions in the room. If I'm sitting in the room with 5 people, the last thing I want is 5 people that agree with everything I say. And that's why they're there, is because they're different opinions. And I think you'd be shocked if you knew some of the things that were discussed in a room about key players, but it stays in the room, and so it also changes. I would think, Rosie, from the time when Kyle Dubas took over in Toronto. Well, when he first came in, he was 28 years old. Yeah. Well, had no NHL experience at all. So you're going to change over time, and your relationship with your boss is going to change, and the input's going to change, and that should all be expected. And even in terms of latitude, it change. It's going to evolve. But I think people would be stunned if they knew some of the topics that were talked about in the privacy of a management room. It's almost in the privacy of your home. And you say things sometimes and you're like, oh, I can't use my loud voice on that one. I can't say that anywhere outside the house. It's the exact same way in an office. And even in terms of trading star players and things, names come up, like even between general managers. There's a reason trades happen between certain teams, because there's a trust level between general managers. But it's not unusual to call and say, hey, I know you love your guy there, but if you're ever thinking of trading him, look, make sure I'm on the list. And the guy he's talking about, I have no intention of trading. I have but it plants a seed in your mind, right? And so, yeah, those conversations, Rosie, happen way more than players would be comfortable with and that people would be comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think people are naive if they don't know that's happening behind the scenes. Like, it has to be. It really is crazy. And it's intriguing as well, sort of the GM search here, Dave. Is there a definitive name that sticks out for you right off the bat?
Really the only one we've heard, Brad Treliving. But the process, guys, in a different chapter in my life, I was in the executive search business, not sports related. And so if a search goes on, the first thing you do is you build a job description for the search. And you work, the search firm would work with the principal in the company and say, okay, here's what we want from the job. These are he has to have this, and this. These three things I'd like, but I don't have to have.
Oh, no, I think we lost him.
Beautiful technology.
Yeah, I guess we'll try to get Dave back in the mix here. I know he's got a couple minutes remaining. I was really curious to hear that answer too. Damn it! It always seems to be that way, right? But yeah,
it is curious. Like, that's what it becomes. You become a headhunter, right? Like, you got to put together all the pieces of your organization, all the people that are there are going to stay there, and who works well with what, and what is our mantra and our mission statement, and is that changing down the road? And if we make this change to this guy, is he going to fit with all these people? And you just become a headhunter, and that's before you even get thinking about talking about hockey or players or on ice performance, right? There's just so much that goes into it, and everyone's sitting here going, who's the GM going to be? It's like, fuck, that is a massive decision that could last a decade. So I understand I know it's they're under a gun to get some stuff going and they need to get the wheels going, but this is a huge decision that I don't think anyone should be or is taking lightly over there.
Well, that's a fascinating thing to me is, like Brendan Shanahan said, they don't want to rush this decision making, but they sort of do. And I know we have Dave back. Dave, I just want your answer on that quickly. I know you got to fly, but just your thoughts on Brad Treliving and that whole process, please.
Well, the time frame, bringing guys in from another organization, how did he perceive the Leafs? How does he perceive the core four? Does he think they have to be broken up? Like, that would be a fresh look and fresh ideas. And Brendan Shanahan came in, and once again, this is all reported, that he did call the core four and say intentions were to keep them together. Well, what if a new guy says, I think they'd be way better with some sort of split up here? And the problem here, guys, July 1st is looming. And once you give Austin Matthews his no move, Mitch Marner his no move, and Willie Nylander his no trade, you've lost some form of control here. So that's the issue, is July 1st is a real date. It's a hard date, and it loses a lot of control for the organization.
It does. It does. I know you got to fly, Dave. Thank you so much for coming back to answer that. That was sort of the pinpoint question here in the interview. So appreciate this. And we'll do this down the road again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your day.
You too.
Appreciate it, Poulin.
That is Dave Poulin, an absolute gem for connecting with us today. I know we had those difficulties last week, and it is the power of technology. You just never know what's going to transpire. And it's always great to get that perspective. Again, Dave mentioned former executive in the league. He's got the player look too. He's in the media. Like, he's done it all. He knows what's going on, right? And that was the curious thing for me is, like, all this stuff that happens behind the scenes that people seem to be naive to, man. Like, do you think they go by on a daily basis? They never talk about Austin Matthews, what a trade would look like, Mitch Marner. Like, to say everything floats out there, no?
Well, you would think so, and you would hope so. And if you're going to be good at your job and you're going to, exercise any and all options that could make your organization better, which I feel like is the definition of a good general manager, then you better be having those conversations, And I think the tough part is dealing with agents and, it's not like you sit down with Austin Matthews every day and say, are you happy here? Do you ever have thoughts of leaving? And even if he did, he'd keep those cards close to his vest and, not want to give up any bargaining power this way or the other. So you're kind of treading, on thin ice, even thinking about different things, because you don't know the outcomes of these things. You don't know the effects of everything. And it's a very difficult, very scrutinized job very complicated job. And again, everyone and their dog, especially in the market of the Toronto Maple Leafs, is watching you, waiting for you, and scrutinizing you 24/7. It is just, and for those reasons is why I kind of understand why Kyle Dubas is saying, hey, this is a big deal for me to do. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all in. And this takes a toll on my family. And it's not like he's 58 years old and his kids are 22. He's got young kids and his wife's, it's a busy time and it's a cherished time and it goes by in the blink of an eye. So to try to balance those two jobs, I can imagine is very difficult. And I think he was just being genuine in his statement saying, hey, I'm trying to be honest here. And, the number one issue with this job is the toll it takes on my family. And then, of course, Twitter goes off and says what they say. Yeah. He's the only guy to ever have a fucking family doing a general. Well, it's different. And he's being honest. So yeah. I can see that part of it and everything that goes along with that job. All the more reason to make sure you get the right guy in there.
Yeah, no, I get it. The only thing I would bring up is that 3-4 days later, the family didn't matter as much when he asked for more money from MLSE, right? So it's somewhere in between the conversation. I don't doubt it. I think mental health is a serious thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm being a sarcastic asshole, but it is a part of the puzzle, and I don't think it's everything. There was bargaining tactics involved, and I think it's just so unique from a PR standpoint, and we're going to see a back and forth. And Kyle Dubas, as we all expected, took the high road yesterday with his remarks saying onward pretty much, and the Dubas family at the end. So we'll see if he does in fact pop up somewhere. He's already been linked to Pittsburgh. Perhaps with the new ownership coming to town in Ottawa, he could be linked to that. Imagine a Battle of Ontario with Kyle Dubas as the GM of the Ottawa Senators, Rosie.
That'd be wild, man. And I mean, we talk about Frank Saravalli breaking it down and how Pittsburgh would be a good fit for him. And quietly, he's like, that's not even close. Imagine he's at the helm of the Sens, man. I mean, Battle of Ontario, all the things that go along with that. After saying that his family XYZ, I still believe that. Oh, fuck. I don't know, man. You'd think he would take time off after saying that. And literally, why say I'm not going to pop up anywhere else if I'm not with the Leafs?
It was a bargaining tactic, man. It was leverage.
It worked really well, man. I think it would be leverage to say I've got options coming out my ass. I could go to Pittsburgh. I go to Ottawa and GM against you guys if you want. Like, do you want me or not? Yeah. That's more leverage to me. To me, all I did was put the seed in Brendan Shanahan's head that, hey, I'm not 100% committed to this job. I've got some wavering opinions on it. Then he's going to go, holy fuck, I need a guy that's all in, man. And I think that hurt him, if anything, as far as leverage or bargaining. And I truly believe he went to his wife and said, do you want to do this or not? She's like, I don't want to say no. It's like opportunity of a lifetime. You could do it again. We'll never have to work again. Then we can travel the world with our kids, whatever you want to do. And he's like, okay, well, let's just go. If they fucking offer me this, then I'll take it and away we go. Maybe that was it. And they're like, you want more money? Now we're already on thin ice. See you later. And that's how it went down. That's my best guess. But again, who knows, man? And we may never know.
Hey, do you know Kyle Dubas is an Ottawa Senators fan growing up? I didn't know this.
I heard that. I didn't know that, but I heard that.
And it always helps when our producer here on the show, Alex, is actually a Sens fan or lives in Ottawa, because he's now posting in the group Dubas to Ottawa, then he trades for Matthews or Marner. Like, that's ever going to fucking happen, because they'll never spend money in Ottawa regardless of the ownership. So good luck with that one. But I would love to see the Battle of Ontario pick up again. So if Kyle Dubas goes there, all the power to him. I hope he grabs social media by the horns like he did in Toronto, and there could be a nice little rivalry in the Battle of Ontario. Could be back one day. You never know. But the Botano wrap-up is presented by Botano.ca. The game starts now, 19+. Please play responsibly. Who knows? Maybe Dubas goes back to Ottawa and reacquires Matt Murray. That would be a great trade.
Oh, you didn't.
Sorry.
I hope very much that he does. I hope that he does.
Yeah, take that contract, Kyle. Please. Thank you. You got it. Now take it back. All right, Rosie, for today's play, man, I just have I struggled yesterday, man. I think the entire hockey world was on the Dallas Stars for a response, and they got destroyed, and their fans started throwing trash on the ice. And then, Jamie Benn, their captain, gets kicked out, Michael Bunting style, 2 minutes into the game, and doesn't talk to the media after the game. That's a whole other conversation. But what is your play tonight? Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Final. Did you know if the Leafs beat the Panthers, they were going to win the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I did know if they beat the Panthers, they would win the Stanley Cup, hence it being that much more frustrating. But
Okay.
they couldn't beat the
Yeah.
Panthers. It looks like
Yeah,
no one
right.
can beat the Panthers. But it's been an odd series as far as scoring and lots of overtimes, but low scoring and just difficult to bet on, honestly. But I'm going back to this over 1.5 first period. I mean, you're basically betting that the game is not going to be 1-0 after the first period. So, minus 120, that's the best value I've seen that bet at because it hits quite often. Usually it's at about minus 150, 160, even 170. And at minus 120, I think it's likely that'll happen. Goals have got to start going in here. Let's put some money on it.
All right, so I'm going to ride with you because you're my partner. I think you just have to go over the data first and foremost. I believe the Carolina under has hit in 11 of 14 games here in the Stanley Cup playoffs, just to know what you're up against, something like that. I've been religiously hitting that under in the first period, but I'm going to ride with you because you're my partner, and it has to happen. And then Saturday night happened where there were 2 disallowed goals and there was supposed to be 3 goals in the first. So ended up being 1 and I hit the under. So we're going to hope for lots of offense tonight. Maybe Carolina wakes up and we'll look at the over first period 1.5. Okay.
Maybe Bobber gets hit by a bicycle on the way to the rink or something.
Don't say that.
But nonetheless,
No.
I feel like more than 1 goal in the first period. Minus 120. Let's go. It's due.
Okay. Well, I don't know if Alex wants to put that back on the screen. I thought I was reading minus 102 for the overhitting. Maybe I'm incorrect. I got to look this up now because it's going to bother me. Yeah, so that's the play. Over 1.5 is actually minus 102. So the odds tell us the under is probably going to happen. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. 102. Put the farm on it. I am. We're going. We're hitting it. More than 1 goal.
Oh, wow.
In the first period.
You're dead set on the value. You love that value of the over, eh?
I'm opening my Botano account right now.
Very well done. I know you got a Botano account out there. All right, let's get to the chat, man. It's on fire, and I'm just so happy I named this show Team Shanny or Team Cal or Team Shanny, man. It just seems to have sparked this entire debate, and many thanks again to Dave Poulin for hopping on today, giving us that unique perspective behind the scenes look at what's transpiring right now. Brendan Shanahan, again, the only name linked to the best of our knowledge so far is Brad Living, and I hope that brings us potentially a Boston Pizza sponsorship on this show. It should, no?
Oh, I hope so. Free for life. We got one of those in old. Why not?
No, because I know the boys over at Oilers Nation have a sponsorship with Boston Pizza. So Boston Pizza, if you're watching right now, I love the pierogi za. We'd love to jump aboard, and especially if Brad Living comes to town, I think it's a perfect partnership, Rosie.
Match made in heaven, obviously. We'll just get those member for life cards and I'll wheel and deal in that place whenever I want. Sounds perfect.
I love that. I wanted to answer this one from Northern Ale, I believe or Northern Ale, excuse me. I can't read properly. Northern Ale, I believe, asked something to the tune of, will you guys be with us? Or how long you guys will be with us? We've gone over it the last couple weeks. We're going to be with you Monday to Friday. Essentially, I believe June 3rd will be the only day where we don't do a show. It's a Friday. But we're going to be with you all the way until free agency, at which point in the summer, I think we're going to scale back a bit. Still do shows for you. They won't be live, but you'll be able to check out our YouTube page, and we're going to put out content whenever there's content to be put out, i.e. a signing or a big-time trade. We're going to have you covered, essentially. So if you're still watching and listening right now and are wondering what's going to happen with this show as the offseason goes on, we are not leaving you at any stretch. We'll be with you until at least free agency. After that, we'll still be hammering out content and making sure you're up to date in the very latest on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we got all facets covered here, Leafs Morning Take, Rosie.
I feel like there's going to be no end to content to be talked about. So we'll be live, till about free agency. I'm sure we'll probably even stay live after that a little while, depending on what kind of triggers are pulled on July 1 and after. And then, all through the summer, anything happens, man, we will be here knocking it out. I got no other plans, to be honest with you. So I'm pumped. I've said it a lot of times. I felt like the spring was going to be a little bit quiet. It's going to be anything but.
Yeah, the only time you might not hear from me is like a 2-week stretch in like the middle of dead of summer, of the dog days of summer. Like I'm planning to get out to Greece, and rest assured I'm not going to be on YouTube or anywhere around social media in Greece. I will be on the beach firing up drinks in Mykonos, the party islands of party islands. And I'm hoping that comes together over the next couple weeks. But that is the potential for yours truly coming up this summer. But again, there's a lot to tackle, man. 37 days, Rosie, until July 1. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff over the next couple of weeks. So I want to hold the conversation. I was going to ask you about the reports that came out from Chris Johnson that Brendan fucking Shanahan called the big boys and said, you're going nowhere. Like, I'm not going to give I sort of did yesterday and said how I felt about that, but I want to leave that on the table for the coming days because I want to bang out some content. So we'll leave it at that. A lot of people in the chat haven't tried Boston Pizza. They don't even sponsor this show specifically, but we got a great partnership with them over at the Nation Network. I love their pierogi pizza. It's tremendous. Just reading as well, Peter Laviolette's name is in the chat quite a bit. Bruce Boudreau was on Monday Night Raw the other night. That's our guy. Imagine Gabby got the Leafs coaching job. That's the unfortunate part. Like, everybody's burying Sheldon Keefe, but you would have to think his days are numbered, unfortunately. Like, I think he's a great coach. I just think his days are numbered, especially with his boy not being here anymore.
Yeah, I think he's a good coach too, but after the season, I would have wanted to see him get changed out and maybe keep Dubas, but that's not happening. Yeah. So in the back of my mind, he's on his way out as well. Nothing against him personally. I don't feel like I think it's obvious he doesn't breed the energy and the passion that group needs to get over the hump in the playoffs. They just seem to disappear. And I mean, if you have a guy that you're willing to go through a wall for, who like lays out the game plan and you understand, holy shit, this is what it takes to win. They just don't seem to have that, man. They just don't seem to show up in the playoffs. So, and as far as some of the lineup issues going on, the head scratchers with the blender and the Justin Hall and the certain parts of games and periods and seasons on the line and who you have out there and stuff just is rough. And I would like to see maybe this new GM comes in and puts a tailor-made coach so that they can work together for a common goal together, pushing on to make this team go where they need to go.
Random thought, dude. Social media and LinkedIn specifically drives me insane. Like, are you on LinkedIn?
Fuck no. For what?
I got like daily messages. Hey, Nick, recently discovered your podcast. I wanted to reach out to let you know how impressed I am with your show. As a podcast enthusiast, I'd love to connect and discuss our shared passion. You think this person's not trying to sell me something? Like, it's bullshit. It's like some of those emails you get where it's like, I have you pinpointed for a job. Anyways, I wanted to get that off my chest as we wrap today, Rosie.
It's that corporate talk. Yeah, I don't do it. I don't sit in corporate meetings. I never had a corporate job, so that stuff just makes me laugh. Going, do you honestly talk like that? Because nobody does. But it almost reminds me of Dubas's release there. It's all sounds like a PR person wrote it, and it said a lot of nothing with a lot of words, basically.
Oh, dude, I just love the Dubas family at the end. So he's now the Dubas family.
This is from his kids.
Yes. Fucking shit. Anyways, I think that's going to do it. Great to have you back in the mix. You're going to be back tomorrow. I believe you're off on Friday. But, man, so much ground to cover. We'll see what happens next in this GM search. Maybe there's more than one name tomorrow. Everything's on the plate for us tomorrow, Rosie. We'll see what happens on Thursday. Okay, buddy?
I hope so. See you then.
That's Jay Rosehill. Many thanks to everybody in the chat. You were fantastic with your thoughts, your comments, your concerns, and everything you brought to the table. Producer Alex, you're fantastic, even though you support the Ottawa Senators. And, of course, Dave Poulin, absolute gem. Thanks so much for his time today. Take care, and fuck the Ottawa Senators.